Ever since I was a kid, I have been fascinated with the Olympics. I usually, especially the Summer Olympics, I was just glued to the television to watch all of those folks. And, I always liked the stories of the athletes, how they prepared themselves, the dedication that it took, the intensity of their preparation, and a lot of the obstacles that they overcame to achieve at this level. My interest in the Olympics is a little more personal this year because our secretary and director of administrative services for the parish, Ginger DiLoretto, her nephew is one of the Olympians. Townley Haas is her nephew, and he's going to be swimming the freestyle. And so I have a little more interest. And I asked Ginger, when did you realize that your nephew was just more than a club swimmer, just more than, one of those kids that starts swim team? I was one of those kids at one point. And he said, actually fairly early on, he just had this drive to achieve. He had this dream of following his heroes in swimming, like Michael Phelps, and he's on the same team as Michael Phelps at this point. So the readings today, especially the reading from Hebrews, and we're going to be starting a 4-week series of homilies unpacking these readings from Hebrews that we have this week and the next 3 weeks. And so part of your homework, you got 2 homework assignments for this homily, is read chapter 11 and 12. Read the whole thing. We only get a sliver of 11 today, and then we're going to get pieces of 12 the next 3 weeks. So read the whole thing, okay? And I'll get to the other homework assignment at the end of the homily. So today we have this history of our salvation. We have later on this image of this cloud of witnesses that is an athletic stadium as we are called to compete in the race of faith. We have this cloud of witnesses like Olympic heroes in the past that inspire those athletes to prepare. We have this cloud of witnesses that in chapter 11 begins with Abel and Enoch and Noah and goes on in our reading today with Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. It'll go on to mention the struggle of the kings and the judges and the prophets and those who suffer for the faith. And that faith, as the reading said today, is the assurance of things hoped for. See, all of them hoped for this covenant with the Lord that would be fulfilled. Not just a promise of the promised land, because that itself was only a sign or a symbol of this deeper promise to be within a land with the Lord that is at peace forever. See, they were searching. They were a pilgrim people. They were a journeying people. And even the promised land was only a way station for a deeper home. And we have that built into our hearts, don't we? We have this desire for the deepest home. Even when we find home with our family and our spouses and with our children, we have a deeper sense that even that home is only a symbol of something even deeper. That St. Augustine says, our hearts are restless until they rest in you. And yet, we're called to the struggle. Sometimes we have it in mind, we know where we want to go, but sometimes we get caught up in the busyness of life. And all of a sudden, we seem to get redirected, right? All of a sudden, if we try to do this on our own, we can get sidetracked with all sorts of different things that may be important at the time, but as we talked about in the last few weeks, are not ultimately important because they disappear. So how does the Lord secure us? How does the Lord encourage us? He gives us this cloud of witnesses. I'll tell you for my own self, when I look back at my faith, who are the heroes in my own faith? I have to start with my father. And I start with not just how he brought us to Mass each week, but also how he lived out his faith. How, as a father, he witnessed to me what it meant to use the sacrament of reconciliation. I remember as a little kid, him taking me and and it was the box at that point, how he would be in the box and line at the box, and how I would see him pray. And I would see this man that I admired so much on his knees praying to God. And I often wondered, how did that faith develop? Well, I found out, I didn't know this about my dad until I was 12 years old, but his mother had passed away when he was 10 years old. So the woman that I had been calling grandma was not actually my dad's mother. And she was a wonderful woman, a kind woman. But I was interested to find out a little bit more about my dad's mother, my grandmother Helen. I come to find out that she was a tremendous woman of faith. A daily Mass was a part of her routine, and she had like 12 people living in the house. Not only her children, but aunts and uncles were living in the house during the Depression. She did everyone's laundry. She worked for the parish, and I had meant to tell the sacristan to do this. She also was a woman of faith. She prepared a chalice with my Aunt Alice, my great Aunt Alice, that has my great-grandfather's tie pin, his wedding ring, and rubies from their rings, and they made a chalice for the first priest ordained in the family. I was not the first priest, but that priest gave me that chalice, and I have that chalice here today. I was going to have it at Mass so you could see it today. But for me, these are ties, these are family ties that are my own cloud of witnesses that stand around me. And my grandmother's faith came from her parents' faith. So there's this cloud of witnesses that continue to support me, so that when I feel that I'm struggling in my own salvation history story, I have a cloud of witnesses that I can call on to support me in that. This is the other piece of homework for you today. Who are your cloud of witnesses? Who are the ones that inspire you in the faith? Who are the ones that draw you to Jesus, to fall in love with the one who is the one who fills that hole, that God-sized hole in our heart? And what I would ask you to do is not only to give thanks for them, but to continue to call upon them when you struggle to be faithful. Because when we know where our goal is, and the goal of eternal life, the goal of being with the Lord, is so much bigger than any Olympic medal. When we know that, that is really the goal of our life, then we won't let our life happen to us by accident. I always think it's so sad when somebody comes and says, Father, I tried to live a good life, and I just don't know how I got here from where I started. I had this intention to grow in love with the Lord, and I found myself just getting so far away from him. I don't know how it happened. Well, there's a warning today and an encouragement to set our eyes on our goal, the homeland that each of us is called to. That is our goal. That really is what will make our hearts joyful. And that's what caused all of those clouds of witnesses to be people who were admirable. Think of St. Francis. Think of Teresa of Calcutta. Think of all this cloud of saints that surround us as well. What is the source of their joy? They knew where they were going, and every part of their life was geared towards that goal. So with your own cloud of witnesses, as we journey with the Lord through these readings of Hebrews, ask the Lord to give you the assurance of things hoped for, faith as the support to our love of the Lord and our trust in his promises to us.